hands.
In your hands.
In your hands are the means to alter fate.
Take as much time as you need. And good luck.
Good luck.
What are the canonical events of Deltarune? This is a question that, for now, until we get access to the other chapters, we will not have a complete answer to that question. Yet, I feel that it is still a question that needs attention whenever those new chapters do come out eventually. My name is DeanSpillaBean, back on your screen, and I'm here to tell you about the canonical timeline theory. It is the idea that the world of Deltarune has an original, or canonical, sequence of events that would dictate the events to happen in each chapter without the player's input. In other words, what would have happened if the player was never a part of the game to begin with? Good news is that we luckily have a way to find out. Bad news is we only have 2 chapters to work off of, so we won't get anything solid until every chapter's been released. And because of this fact, I will no doubt make another video on this theory whenever we get more information. Well, of course, depending on when the chapters get released and when I have time to do it. But that's besides the point. So, what do we have right now then? Well, interesting thing, it's actually possible to load into Chapter 2 without a Chapter 1 save file. On the surface, this is pretty much just a convenience feature for us, so we don't have to replay every single chapter, so we can play up to, Chapter 7 or something like that. I mean, could you imagine making everybody play every single chapter whenever Chapter 7 comes out, or just in order to get to Chapter 7 to begin with? Geez, that actually sounds terrifying. Oh god, I'm gonna have to spend several days preparing for that. Ugh. Because, well, if you don't know, there are specific events and items that only happen in Chapter 2 if you set them up in Chapter 1. By extension, this means you have to do stuff in Chapter 2 in order to prepare for things that happen only in Chapter 3. So on and so forth, and this only gets worse. An example of one of these events is that in Chapter 1, if you go talk to Noelle at the end of the game over in the Light World, talk to her about Susie and then mention that she really likes chalk, then in Chapter 2, before Kris and Susie enter the Dark World, Noelle will actually give Susie a lunchbox full of chalk. This act will grant you the Light Candy, an item that in the Dark World heals you for 120 HP. Not exactly too important, but it is kind of interesting that you have to do specific actions in Chapter 1 to get an item in Chapter 2. Now, it's not important as of yet, but it could be important later. Probably not though, it's just chalk. How important could chalk be? Another event is Onion Sun, who, unless you talk to them in Chapter 1, will not show up in Chapter 2. If you befriended Onion Sun, then in Chapter 2, he'll talk about how there's a song over in the ocean that seems somewhat familiar, but he's not quite even sure where that song came from. He just knows it's familiar. What exactly that song is up to anybody's guess. But we won't be able to find out the true answer to what that song even is in Chapter 3 unless we talk to Onion Sun in Chapter 1 and then again in Chapter 2. Oh god, is this gonna go on forever? We're gonna have to talk to Onion Sun every single day. I hope not. Another example is Mettaton, who, for now in Deltarune, is just a ghost, and isn't in a robot body. But you can knock on their door and try to actually talk with them. They'll be like, "Oh, you're a fan of mine. Oh, cool. I'm a nobody, though. Why are you here? Thank you for being a fan." Then in Chapter 2, if you go back and knock on the door yet again, Mettaton then asks for you to get something entertaining for them sometime tomorrow. Which can only mean that in Chapter 3, we're going to have to get an item that is somewhat entertaining, and then give that to Mettaton. What happens after is anyone's guess. And then there's Sans, who keeps making excuses as to why you can't see his brother, even though he's leading you on saying, just come tomorrow, he'll be here. And then right at the very end, he's like, don't worry, he'll probably be here when Azrael gets back. Oh damn, we're gonna have to wait until 2030 in order to see Papyrus, because that's when Chapter 7 is coming out. Hello, people from Chapter 7. Was I correct? I would like to have been correct. Also, a bit of a fear that I got while I was actually trying to make this video. I'm a little worried that in Chapter 7, if we get one thing wrong, and we have to, start all over from Chapter 1 just so we can lead up to Chapter 7 being like, we gotta go talk to Onion Sun in Chapter 1, and then we gotta go talk to him in Chapter 2, and then go talk to someone else in Chapter 3, and we just go on and on and on and on and on and on. Oh, God, this is terrifying. We're gonna have to replay Deltarune dozens of times just to have seen everything. Toby, your magnum opus is a little too open, I think. Another terrifying thing is also not picking specific choices and then seeing the outcomes of those non-choices that are being made. As in, oh, you didn't talk with this person? Oh, you didn't recruit these people? Oh, you fought those guys instead? Well, now we gotta figure out what happens after all these chapters. This sounds like an absurd amount of bloat now that I'm saying it out loud. But maybe it's worth something. Well, to segue out of that tangent, what if we just enter Chapter 7 without prior time spent in other chapters? Like, wait, are we just gonna arrive at, like, the apocalyptic event that's in Chapter 7, right at our doorstep, right as soon as we enter, and then we're gonna be like, alright, we're gonna have to fight God or something like that? Although I guess in this game it's more or less the angel. Maybe. Or the knight. We don't even know who the knight is yet. Regardless, current theory going is that in Chapter 7 we're gonna have to face up against the Roaring, because we're so good at our job that we let the Dark Fountains too many, or something. That and maybe Kris was a part of. Kris, what are you doing? So the Roaring happens and the Titans get released, probably? Wait, Titans? What are those things? Well, that's like an entirely different subject. Well, kinda. It's what comes out of the Dark Fountain that creates the Roaring, or something of that equivalent. Alright, back on topic. Is this a canonical event? Will we always be fighting the Titans? This is the question that I would like to be solved at some point. Solved by if, well, Chapter 7 comes out and we go fight the Titans. Then we can actually see what happens when we never prepared at all in any other chapter. Will we just lose? Or even worse, is there never going to even be a fight at all, and we just literally have no shot? Or are all of our choices leading up to Chapter 7, or any lack of choices, all leading up to our ability to succeed better in Chapter 7? As in, like, it just makes the fight significantly easier. But if that's the case, then we have the ability to either win the fight or not win the fight, but we always still have a chance no matter which timeline we're in. So do our choices even matter in terms of, like, giving us the ability to have a chance at victory, if victory's kind of assured over time anyway, despite our efforts? Okay, well, let's just say for now that we're gonna have to go fight the Titans, because that's just gonna have to be a thing eventually. So, how powerful are these Titans anyway? Because if they're so powerful that no matter what timeline that we're in, we just can't defeat them, well, why? What makes them so strong? Could it be that with the rumored power to spread an absurd amount of darkness everywhere, that our ability to even fight them is just completely null? Wait, that means that we're just gonna have to fight them in the light world with our... Wait, hold on, how does that even work? Yeah, whatever, we're gonna find out in 2030 anyway, because that's when Chapter 7 comes out. Oh boy, I can't wait. Literally, I can't wait. I desperately cannot wait. Toby, give us the chapters. Give us the chapters right now. Or take your time, whatever. Business. Numbers. Hey, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so, in Chapter 2, if we started the game without Chapter 1 save data, what did Kris and company do in Chapter 1 without our input? Luckily, we can kind of find out. We can open up our inventory and see that Kris, Susie, and Ralsei have amber cards, but no weapons. However, for some reason, Ralsei has the white ribbon. Why he has it to begin with? It could only mean that Kris gave Ralsei the white ribbon, for whatever reason. Ralsei introduces collecting items, asks Kris to equip the white ribbon, and for whatever reason Kris decides to give the white ribbon to Ralsei instead? That's kinda odd, but okay. Other important things to note about the white ribbon is that it is used if you combine it with the pink tail to create the twin ribbon. Okay, so the white ribbon is given to us just so we can create the twin ribbon in Chapter 2 once we get the item. So it's just a convenience feature so we can actually make that item, using all the items from Chapter 1. Wait a minute, what about the spike band? Because it requires an iron shackle and a glow wrist. Iron shackle is an item you get when you're in prison in Chapter 1, but you can only get it if, like, you're in the prison and you click on the item, which means for whatever reason Kris did not click on the iron shackle and equip it. Glow wrist, on the other hand, is something you get in Chapter 2. So, by that very nature, because we'll still be losing out on one item that we missed out from Chapter 1, we won't be able to make the spike band in Chapter 2, no matter what our efforts are. So why is the twin ribbon so important? cool. Now that's another thing to worry about. Why is this thing so important? Well, gosh, we won't know until Chapter 7, probably. Good grief. Still, it's so weird that out of every single collectible that Kris and company could have picked up across their journeys, not even a dark candy was picked up. Out of everything, the white ribbon. Why this thing? I hate that we're just gonna have to wait to figure this one out. Good grief. Okay, something a bit more solid. We won't get any secret boss items. That is something that canonically Kris and company does not do. You can find out because they also just don't have secret boss items. So it's probably safe to assume that Kris doesn't actually go find Spamton in Chapter 2. Would he? Actually, no, that'd be interesting if Kris, like, gets access to the disc, but not, like, do the full Spamton Neo fight. But what if he did and he got, like, some item? But that would also mean he would get a Shadow Crystal. But that could be kind of weird because we didn't get a Shadow Crystal in Chapter 1. So maybe he just has the disc, or no disc. It's hard to tell. Maybe he talked with Spamton, maybe he didn't. We won't know for certain until Chapter 3. Though in all likelihood, it's just we won't get any secret boss items. Also, everything that I'm saying right now probably isn't even worth talking about, because maybe it's literally just a convenience feature. Also, it's kind of hard to tell what options specifically are canonical, because maybe Toby missed something and forgot like one specific thing, so we can say, oh, they never canonically got that specific item. So for now, we're just going to have to pay attention to what actually does go through the chapters. It would be interesting that if we start Chapter 3, we start with the twin ribbon. That'd be kind of weird. Oh my, wait, this damn hole, it terrifies me greatly. If you don't know, this hole in particular is filled with whatever Chapter 1 boss item that you have acquired on your very first run, no matter what timeline that you're currently in, or save file. This thing scares me greatly. Because, I mean, okay, think of the implications. If you can actually get an item in Chapter 1 without having to fight a secret boss, which, in all honesty, is probably still a convenience feature, just so you don't have to spend time to do it. So here's the situation. What if we defeat Spamton in Chapter 2? And got one of his items. Okay, cool. We got the Shadow Crystal, got whatever item we got, go into Chapter 3, that's pretty neat. Wait, I want to redo Chapter 2, but this time we don't defeat Spamton Neo before we go into Chapter 3. We actually, when we get the empty disc, go into Chapter 3, since we didn't defeat Spamton Neo and get the Shadow Crystal. Does this mean that we can get the Shadow Crystal from Spamton Neo, but still have Spamton in our pockets by association with this empty disc? Is this possible? Heck if I know, but that's scary if that's even going to be a thing. Something else I kind of remember because of the implications of this hecking hole. Since this hole gives you whatever item that the secret boss has, this kind of means that whenever we try to go for a Chapter 3 run, when we've already done like a Chapter 2 run at some point in some timeline somewhere, our run is technically still somewhat tainted and accounted for. So then it makes it kind of difficult to figure out what actions were like canonical and which were not. Hopefully it's only this hecking hole that has any like connection to different timelines. If that's so, then I think we're safe. Maybe. Oh, I guess other thing that this also confirms is that canonically Kris does not talk with anybody in the light world, which also kind of lines up with the fact that a lot of other people in the game were like, hey Kris, what the heck? Why are you like talking a whole lot? This is not normal for you. What the heck, Kris? So since Kris doesn't actually talk with anybody normally, and then we kind of do that a whole lot, this also means Kris doesn't talk to people normally. He's an introvert. We can tell this is the case because if we talk to Onion Sun, Metaton, Sans, they're like, hey, you weren't here last time. Actually, I guess in the case of Onion Sun, they're just not there. And Sans just find it weird that you're trying to interact with him without any information on who he is. I guess other things to think of is if Kris and company actually attacked everybody in Chapter 1. Which actually they didn't, because if you go into Chapter 2 with Chapter 1 save data of having beaten up a bunch of people, Lancer will say, oh, don't worry, Susie, I told everyone to be nice, because I am technically king now. This entire line is supposed to be a retcon because I'm pretty sure Toby and gang didn't have the recruit system well thought out, and they didn't feel like completely redoing Chapter 1. So, this is, I think, a retcon line, which is only present if you beat everybody up in Chapter 1 going into Chapter 2. Of which, if you go into Chapter 2 without any Chapter 1 save data, that line is not there. Therefore, Kris and company spared everybody along the way. So, I think we can safely say that they didn't fight everybody in Chapter 1. If anything, they at least spared everybody. But when it comes to Chapter 2, there's still, like, everybody that needs to be recruited. So, does Kris and company recruit everybody, or do they end up missing some people? We won't really know the answers to that till Chapter 3! And also, this kind of goes for, like, every other thing that I could probably even talk about, like this canonical timeline theory that I really want to do. Problem is, I don't have enough information to go off of quite yet. To put it simply, as much as I want to talk about like all these really cool events and actually make a video on something extremely specific, I only have like 2 parts to go off of, and I can only confirm one of those parts. So we really don't know what's going to happen until like the next few chapters come out, basically. But here's what we know. So normally, the main story isn't really deviated too much. Everything goes kind of according to plan, going through the Dark Worlds, recruiting everybody, becoming friends and such, defeating the boss and recruiting the boss, blah blah yada yada, steal the Dark Fountain, oh we're back in the Light World and we just go right back home and do whatever we do at home. The main story is not deviated from, basically. They also collect no items, weirdly enough, save for one of course, and that's the white ribbon. For what reason, again, we won't know until later chapters. No secret bosses either. Kris and company didn't seem to get any items or acknowledgement that they defeated any secret bosses. So we're gonna go off of that they never did anything like that. You know, except if you defeated one in a previous chapter and then restarted. Because that's weird. And lastly, no side quests, and by that I just basically mean I'm not gonna talk with anybody. I'm not gonna talk with Rudy, not gonna talk with Metaton, Onion Sun, Sans even. No one gets talked to, even in the Dark Worlds. Man, Kris is kind of boring, aren't they? Well, maybe Kris wants that. Hard to tell. Strange kid. However, maybe that's actually what Kris would have done normally. Now, I mentioned Kris would have done normally because, at least in Chapter 2, there's actually a little bit of evidence towards specific actions that you can do, being ones that Kris probably would have done normally. So, a few examples. If we go over to the acid boat ride that you have with Rousey starts opening up about specific feelings they have, basically being like, I can't believe I'm having friends again. It feels nice being with you like this. And then Kris doesn't really reciprocate the same feelings, just more like, yeah, that's a little awkward. But Rousey also mentioning, you know what, that's like a very you response. That's a very Kris response. So maybe in that aspect, it probably was what Kris would have said normally. We could probably also notice this when Kris is very enthusiastic in their voices whenever we talk about specific stuff. Another example is after the arcade fight with Queen, where you have the choice of either flourishing under the bosom of Queen's hellish reign, or perish to it. If you choose perish, Susie acknowledges that she said that extremely enthusiastically for some reason. So perhaps this is probably what Kris would have said normally? Maybe. There was also an interaction after the Stanton Neo fight, where Susie's like, what? Are we just not going to acknowledge the fact that this was all like a bunch of craziness? What do you think about this, Kris? And then Kris is shaking for some odd reason. Kris, are you okay? You can respond with no or yes. If you choose no, the others start mentioning that, hey, you don't have to shout about that. Jeez, look, it's okay, you can calm down now, it's all over. If you choose yes, however, Kris will say yes in a very reluctant manner. And Rousey and Susie start noticing this. That's odd. Why couldn't you just say that you're not okay? Why do you have to say yes? All that being said, that's probably what Kris probably would have done in those situations normally. So we could probably look out for those in the future chapters and see like, oh wow, yeah, that's exactly what you would have done in that situation. And that's probably what the correct canonical events would be. Well, unfortunately, I think that's probably all that I can really, like, extrapolate from what chapters that we have access to at the moment, until the other chapters come out. So, we're gonna have to kind of leave it off there. But, before I end off the video, I kind of want to even talk about why I even went on this path to begin with, and why I felt so needed to make a video on this. And it's because of a video that I have watched by Molly Stars on their device theory. It was this theory alone that brought a whole lot of evidence to the limelight and really put into perspective that maybe there actually is a canonical timeline in the game. Because, okay, what is the device theory by Molly Stars? Well, basically, it is a 3-part video series that is collectively about 10 hours long, and not everybody has the time for that, which is why I had like 3 times. I watched it 3 times. Yes, I watched it 3 times. Anyways, the series itself deep dives into the implications of the device, the very instrument that allows us to interact with the Deltarune world. This thing. I don't get to see it as green normally unless you don't have a Chapter 1 save file completed yet, which is a little interesting. But to make a very long story short, basically, Gaster really likes Deltarune and likes the story of it. In fact, that's kind of all that Gaster seems to be doing now, is just being very interested in this world. However, there's only one problem with it, and Gaster doesn't exactly like this issue, and that's that the roaring happens. Probably, we don't know for certain. It just seems to be that the ending of Deltarune is something that is not to Gaster's liking. So, through his space-time wizardry magic, or whatever the heck he has as power, he has created a device, allowing us specifically to interact with this Delta world. A device that, given into our hands, has the potential to change fate. Through our determination alone, we can possibly right the wrongs of this world and prevent the roaring. Or potentially survive it, one or the other. There's kind of more to that device theory, but that's like the main point of it. Now, something that I kind of wish that Molly went a little bit more in detail on is the implications that, oh gosh, if Gaster knows what the ending of Deltarune is and isn't particularly fond of it, does that mean that there is actually a canonical timeline that does exist for Gaster to cite his worry from? Unless, you know, Gaster has impeccable foresight, but we don't really know what he's able to do right now. So we're kind of stuck with what we got now, which is probably that there is a canonical timeline, and Gaster knows about it, and wants us to fix it, potentially. Or maybe Gaster does have an actual method of looking into this canonical timeline, and upon seeing the ending and finding it quite unfavorable, he creates the device for us to use to prevent this reality from occurring. Maybe the real story of Deltarune is completely redoing the entire game over and over again, every single chapter, over and over and over again, until maybe we can finally find the one combination of events, the one sequence of correct choices, to possibly prevent the roaring, or at least surviving it. Now, I'm not too sure on that being the actual ending of the game, because I feel like it would be kind of annoying to get all the way to the very end of the game, only to then be told, hey, so, that's cool that you got here and all, and you're going to fight against the roaring and whatnot, but there's a slight issue. You forgot the twin ribbon, and you're going to have to go back and go get that one. Alternatively, you didn't talk to Mettaton that one time. You didn't talk to Sans? Well, too bad. You've missed out on the true ending. You're going to have to restart all over again. Now, for that reason specifically, I don't think that's probably what's going to happen. So my guess is there will probably be a reasonable ending to the game, just to, you know, be like, this is actually kind of a, you know what, this is a good ending. This is a pretty good one. We've diverted the apocalypse. But maybe there's something else. Something else that we could be doing. Something else. What could it be? Saving someone that we forgot. Who others have forgotten? Maybe one alternative is to find Des. And that's also another part of the device theory that Molly went into, is that maybe with this device we can possibly find Des and mend the broken relationships between the Dreamer and Holiday households. Well, that was interesting. Unfortunately, I believe that is all the time that I have to even talk about this subject. I will most definitely return to this theory and make a part 2 once the new chapters come out and I have time to research everything about it. I've got other projects that I want to get into this year. They're not too many, but they're just projects that I really want to get into at some point soon. That, and in order to even go into more research about the canonical timeline theory, I'm going to need to dive way too much into theoretical things that could possibly be happening in Chapter 3. We don't know for certain. I don't really want to waste time that much. But for sure, once I have time and the new chapters come out, I will come back to this game and return to the theory of the canonical timeline. So that all being said, I'd like to say thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it at least some amount, and you all have a good night. Thank you for watching. Good night, everyone.